Welcome to the Tipping Point Show. I'm Jimmy Evans, and it's my great pleasure today to have joining me on the show my good friend, Rabbi Jonathan Cahn. He is the author of many New York Times best-selling books. He leads Hope of the World Ministry, an international outreach of teaching, evangelism, and compassion projects for the world's most needy. He also leads the Jerusalem Center, Beth Israel, a worship center made up of Jews and Gentiles, people of all backgrounds, just outside of New York City in Wayne, New Jersey. He's the most amazing prophetic voice of our generation. He's with me today to talk about his new book, the Josiah Manifesto. Rabbi, thank you for having me with me.
Great to be here, Jimmy.
Well, listen, you blow my mind. I've told you that a million times. I first met you when we were talking about your first book, The Harbinger.
Yeah.
And I had never heard anything like that in my life. And then you came out with another one and another one. The Josiah Manifesto, this is amazing. And so when you were led to write this, what has been the reaction of this book?
Well, first of all, this is the only time that I was led to write a book the day I finished the last book. You know, when it was The Return of the Gods. Right. The day I finished it, something happened, and then I knew right then that this was to be the thing, that this will also have an answer in it, not only the mysteries, but that. I'm kind of amazed, but it's I was just found out just a few days ago that it's number one of nonfiction in America.
Wow.
And that's great. So I had no idea. I never know what the response is going to be. So I'm just been blown away.
Well, you never disappoint. Your books are amazing.
Thank you.
Every single one of them. But what is this going to reveal?
This I put it this way. What if God was giving us a revelation of what the prophetic moment is now and where it's going and what we need to do to be prepared, to be ready for that. A blueprint from the Bible that is for this time. And the other thing is that what if there was a calendar from God that actually had not only the shakings of America, what has happened, but also when things are to happen. I mean, the timing of it. And if we were all part of this mystery that most people didn't realize, but we've been living through this thing, that is what the Josiah Manifesto is going to open up. So in many ways, Jimmy, it's kind of like taking the reader on a prophetic journey with this mystery and that mystery, and they all come together to open up really what is the manifesto or the template or the answer. So I believe it's one of the most important things I could have written.
Well, one of the things that you do, like with The Harbinger and many of your books, you see things that other people just don't see, but they come from God. Yeah. They all point back to God. There's a divine plan. Yeah. Things aren't just happening,
That's right.
just circumstantially.
That's right.
So the mystery begins on the island of Cuba, and you give a prophetic object and message to Fidel Castro.
Yes.
So tell us what happened.
Yeah, I usually don't put myself in the books, but this one I witnessed these things in two places. Yeah, what happened is I was asked to go to Cuba when Fidel Castro opened up the island for 1 month to allow the gospel. And so he said it was probably to show the world there's some freedom. Well, it was for 1 month. But the believers asked me to come and open it up and sound the shofar, open up this month-long journey across Cuba. It ended up in Havana, Revolution Square. And so the last event, before that, there was so much prophetic things happened for another time, but incredible. But the last event was in Revolution Square, and Fidel Castro came. And the thing is that, now he didn't do anything, he right. witnessed it. Yeah. But then I was invited to go to the presidential palace. Now, I'll say one thing, before I even went on that journey, a man from Cuba, a pastor who had been imprisoned by Castro, came to our service the week before, and he gives me this word, and he says, "You're going to enter the palace of the king." So I was already prepared. So I gave him a Bible, which were banned in Cuba, with number one, and I gave him a shofar with an inscription with a word on it, and linked to the Jubilee. And I gave him a sheet of paper that was a prophetic word about the Jubilee. Now the thing is, that was the message I was bringing in Cuba. And the thing is that it was all about the Jubilee. Now the thing is, it turned out, Jimmy, that why I was led, and I'm not saying I always know what I'm doing but it turned out that it was the reason I gave it, that was giving the time how much he would have left in power before he'd be removed. And the thing is that it gave the exact year that it would end, it gave the exact day that would end, and it gave the exact hour.
Oh my gosh.
It goes all the way back. If you count, there's a whole mystery here. You go from Batista when the dictator fled, you go by the hour of it, and you go by the mystery of the Jubilean year, the 50th day, the Jubilean day, and it's the exact hour of it. So this opens, and the reason why I put it at the beginning is that because this opens up another time. When we think of the Jubilee, we think of all the good things, which is great. Yes, if you lost your land, you get it back.
Right.
But if you took somebody's land, if you took what didn't belong to you, it's taken away. So the Jubilee is also a year of restitution, and it has that form of judgment for the other side of it.
Wow.
And so that's what's going to come to America. That's when it comes to the world and to America and begin opening up a very big thing that we've all been part of.
So you're saying Fidel Castro was in power for exactly 50 years?
He was the Jubilee, and this is good that we talk about it now because the Jubilee began. It says 7 times 7 years. That's 49, and then the 50th year is that when you reach 50, that's the end. Okay, so when you go to if you go by Leviticus, the 7 times 7, the 49 to the 50th year, to the 50th day, and to the hour of when Batista fled, so did Castro. Castro reside at 3 a.m, just like Batista. I mean, exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's, and again, that's God.
Yeah.
Those things don't just happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so the book reveals some stunning discoveries concerning the coming of the plague to America. So tell us about that.
Yeah, well, one of the things is that we have the Jubilean principle, but there's another principle, and that is the prophet Jeremiah. He's looking over the valley of Hinnom, where they're offering up their children, and that's where he gives this word. That's actually where he smashed that jar, gives the word of judgment, and he says, because of what you did to the children, it's going to be done to you. This valley was the valley where you lifted them up. So this is going to be now a valley of slaughter. And he says the sword's coming back to you. And so the first principle is that what you do to the children is going to come back. God is just. Mm-hmm. And so the thing is the thing is, he says one of the ways it comes back, it says in Hebrew is dever gadol, which means in Hebrew a great plague or a massive pandemic. So that's one of the forms that it comes back from what Jeremiah said. Now the thing is, and by the way, I'm throwing this in, I didn't plan on this, but the judgment that Jeremiah talks about happens in the 19th year from when the first warning came, which is when Nebuchadnezzar first came, 19th year. Well, if you take 9/11, we first met when we were talking about 9/11, and we went there. If you go to the 19th year, it takes you to the year 2020, which is when this plague comes.
Wow.
And so the thing is, and the thing is that, so you have, when did we begin killing our children? We began killing our children not in 73, that's Roe versus Wade, but it began in 1970 when abortion on demand began in America. That was just the Supreme Court that spread it all over.
Right.
But so the thing is, when is the Jubilean year of abortion in America? It's 2020.
Oh, wow.
The time of the plague. Now the thing is but it's even more than that, because the very day that it began, when it was New York on the continent, New York, the bill appeared on January 20th, 1970, and that bill is going to lead to Roe versus Wade in the end. So go forward for 50 years, anything happened. This plague called COVID officially enters America on January 20th, 2020, 50 years to the exact date.
Wow.
From the time we began, we turned toward the killing of children, the plague comes at the exact 50th day. 50th year to the day. The day.
Absolutely.
And that was patient zero. That was the day of it. And it was all there.
So what does the ancient Valley of Hinnom have to do with New York? Okay.
Well, I'm just going to, one thing in the middle of that. Remember that's when it began. Remember when everything kind of fell on America? And that is that it was in March when lockdowns, we were quarantined. And it was a particular day when Trump went on television and he said, we're quarantined now. And it was a pandemic, stock market, everything. The media calls it the day that changed everything. It was March 11th. March 11th. If you go back 50 years, anything happened March 11th, 1970. That's the exact day we began killing children in America. So we launched this death, we took life, and then in the Jubilee, life is taken on the exact day. And then it falls upon us.
And that was New York City?
That was everything. That was America. But New York City, the principle is that Jeremiah says, he speaks to Hinnom, the Valley of Hinnom, and we get the word hell, as you know.
Right.
But he said that it's not just going to be the time. The very place where you did it, that's where it's going back to. Where you shed the children's blood, it's going back to. So do we have a Valley of Hinnom? The Valley of Hinnom is New York. New York is not only the place that launched abortion to the continent of America, but it is the abortion capital of America to this day. More children are killed in New York, and I believe New York City, than any other place in America.
Really?
And yes, in fact, so what happens? So what would we expect Go 50 years later, and what happens? This pandemic, this contagion comes to America. By the way, America has also led the world in abortion. I mean, led it into abortion in many ways. But the thing is it comes to America. America becomes the center. At the same moment, New York becomes the center of this plague in America. So much so that 1 out of every 2 cases at that time was in New York. If you can imagine, 1 out of every 2. And the thing is that then it goes to the milestone day, which is April 10th, when New York passes every other nation in the world. It's not just other cities. It has more cases than China, more cases than anything.
Gosh.
That was April 10th. Go back 50 years from April 10th, the milestone, anything. April 10th is the day that New York legalized abortion. So therefore, to the exact date.
Wow.
Exact
Wow,
date.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
What is the mystery of the gates?
Well, this is actually, it began in the Harbinger that and you know this, is that one of the things is that God says judgment comes to the gates. When judgment comes, there's something about the gate. And so New York has been crucial. When we met in New York, which is the gate of America. Sure. New York is the gate. Sure. And so many things have happened. 9/11 happened in New York. The crashes happened in New York. So much evil has come from New York as well.
Sure.
It's not only that abortion came to New York when it spread to our continent, but it came through New York. And that is that people don't realize in those first 3 years from 1970 to Roe, the majority of abortions in America were performed in New York, the majority. And people would come to New York, it spread to the nation. So it's the gateway through which it spread.
Right.
So 50 years later, is it possible that something else spread through New York? And the thing is, they only discovered this when they looked at the genetic markers of the virus, and they found out that the majority if you had COVID, the majority of the cases came through the gate of New York where we killed our children 50 years before, the same gate. And the thing is that when you look, the other thing is that same year, 1970, there was one other gate. It was number 2. It was the Western gate. It was where abortion came in. It was Washington State. So 50 years later, there's 2 gates through which this plague comes. It is New York and it is Washington State. In fact, patient 0 is Washington State, coming in on the same 50 years to the day that New York, began with abortion. Just ponder it. I mean that we're talking about genetics, but the virus bore the markers of the 2 gates where we killed our children. Anyone who had it.
I have a guest on the show sometime, Bill Koenig.
Yes.
And he wrote a book, and he was a journalist in Washington, D.C. for many years, White House correspondent. And he documented 126 cases of when the United States tried to pressure Israel into dividing the land in historic natural disasters.
Yes, absolutely.
And the thing and it's like what you're saying here, we see all the bad things happening. There's a reason for those things.
Yeah.
You trace that back to things.
Yeah. And listen, we know this is what we preach, but the Bible truly has the answer to really everything.
That's right.
And the thing is that when people think everything's out of control, what does it say? No, this is so exact. God is the God of good, but he uses all things, including evil.
That's right.
He'll use good and evil to accomplish the purposes, to say, listen, I'm still on the throne. And one of the things that I believe many of my books go this way or show is that the God of the Bible, for people try to dismiss him, and this culture tries to minimize him, the fact he is just as real and just as active and on the throne as he was then.
That's what I love about your book. It shows God in our society and in the world right now active.
Yeah.
And if someone's looking, they can find him.
That's right. Yeah.
So what is the mystery or your book asks the Jeremiah question? What is it? What's the answer?
Well, Jeremiah says, when he speaks about what you did to the children, he says it's going to be matched by what's going to come to you. And this is like a ironclad kind of law, life for life and that, that whole thing.
Right.
When Abraham Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln kind of got prophetic at the end of his life. When he kind of wavered with God, but at the end he spoke about the Civil War as a judgment for slavery, for what happened. And if you look at the walls of the memorial in his last inaugural address, he says the judgments of God are righteous altogether. And he says it may be that this war will continue until every drop of blood shed by the lash will be matched by the blood of the sword in the war. He literally said it. So you got this principle. So I asked the question, it's kind of an unavoidable question in the book. I said, okay, but therefore, What about the numbers? What about the matching? What could it be? Could there be anything there? And so I looked at that critical 3-year period where we began doing this until Roe, and how many children, how many babies were killed? 1.3 million were killed in that 3-year window. 50 years later, you have another 3-year window, and it's the window of this plague. It's 3 years, and everything matched. By the way, every year matches the year of abortion. So I went to look at the CDC, and I looked at other things. How many Americans by this excess death? They go through the how many were killed? The answer is 1.3 million.
Oh my God!
The plague struck the same amount as the children were struck.
Oh my gosh! That's amazing. Yeah. Okay, so the Josiah Manifesto, yes. You have something in here about January 6th?
Yes.
On Capitol Hill?
Yeah, this goes with something we've talked about, which is the paradigm. And, right. And one of the things that...
The paradigm is mind-blowing, by the way, well, his book.
Well, it continued. And the thing is that one of the things about this book, the Josiah Manifesto, is that several of the mysteries in the other books converge, come home, and continue on. So the paradigm, for those who don't know, just to set the stage in Donald Trump, is that it's saying that even the people, even the leaders, even events of our times have a prototype, because God weaves everything together, a prototype in the Bible. And so when you look at the leaders, and so for those who have not known it, Donald Trump, the prototype for America is this man called Jehu. Yeah. Jehu was wild. He was unpredictable. You never knew what he was going to say or do. Of course, Donald Trump. He was a fighter. He wasn't a politician. He was a fighter. Donald Trump fights with everybody. He was unlikely. Nobody expected him. And suddenly, God raises up this guy. And by the way, this is not, this is not political, as you know. No. And this is also not, we don't know where Donald Trump is at with God, but we don't know where Jehu is at with God. Right. But God uses all things. And so Jehu was used when when Israel was falling away from God and the house of Ahab was going on. He raises up this unlikely guy to stop it, or at least to slow it down, And so Jehu was raised up. He sets on a mission, on a race to the throne on a chariot. That's where you get the thing where they say drives like Jehu. It says the guy sees, the watchman sees the chariot coming, and he says, I don't know who it is, but he drives like Jehu because he drives like a madman. And so Donald Trump begins his race to the throne. And by the way, Jehu was prophesied over, and Donald Trump was prophesied over by believers. Yeah. So Jehu begins his race, and it's a crazy race. So Donald Trump. And the thing is that on the way to the throne, he makes an alliance. Jehu makes an alliance with the religious conservatives of his land. So Donald Trump does the same. In fact, Jehu invites one of them to be his partner in the race, on the chariot, who's a pious man of God, who's actually abstains from alcohol and all this stuff. It's all there. And so Donald Trump. Now, when Jehu comes to the capital city with an agenda to drain the swamp. So of course Trump. Now, but the final thing before he comes to power is that he has to come against the nation's former first lady. So therefore, and of course we have Hillary. And the thing is that, and you remember, Jimmy, everybody was saying, Hillary's going to win. Hillary's going to win. The paradigm says no, Jehu's going to win, and Hillary's going to fall. In fact, I'm going to throw something in. This is not in the book, but when Hillary Clinton was being nominated, that day that she was going to receive the nomination, to stand against Trump. So you got, a man gives the speech to herald her praises, and he keeps saying, the theme was, they threw her down. They threw her down, but she wouldn't stay down. They threw her down. The whole thing was they threw her down. And if you typed in the words, threw her down, it's going to take you to 2 Kings, when Jezebel stands against Jehu, and she is thrown down. She's a downfall. Oh my! Okay, so now, and by the way, one last thing. This is how amazing God is in this. Yeah. That if you take, it's also from the paradigm. If you take the exact time that these people were on the stage in the Bible, the national stage, and you look at when these people here, the modern ones it matches up incredibly with Hillary Clinton. She was on the national stage with her husband for 22 years, from governor to the end of his presidency. Then she was in public office for 12 years. She stepped out. She came back for 2 years to run for president. That comes out to 22 years with her husband, on her own, 14 years. You look at Jezebel, the former first lady who stood against Jehu. She was on the national stage for 22 years with Ahab, and on her own, 14 years. So, okay.
And let me tell you, the book paradigm, the whole thing's like that. It's about Obama, Bill and Hillary Clinton, Trump.
It even gives the exact date of 9/11 based on the template and the exact hour. Yes, and so, but this is continued. But here's the thing, Jimmy, it's continued. There are things that are in the paradigm from the Bible that have continued. And so one of the things is that when Jehu comes to power, when he comes to the capital city, he sees this great temple of Baal, and they're killing babies, and he tears it down. And the principle is when Jehu rises, the temple of Baal falls. When there happened to be a temple of Baal that's been in the world since ancient times, that's still in Syria, in Palmyra, Syria. Trump begins his rise in summer of 15. That same summer, the Temple of Baal falls after 2,000 years.
Oh my!
It's true, and the thing is, that's going to be almost a foreshadow of something else that's going to happen. So let me bring it to January 6th, because obviously it wasn't in the paradigm, but it's there in the paradigm, but it came true after, and that is the temple was there, and that is that. At one point, Jehu calls for an assembly, calls people to come to the capital city. They come, so Trump calls for people to come to the capital city for a gathering. They come there. The people of Jehu come and they surround a great Capitol building. So the people of Trump, they surround this great Capitol building. At one point, they storm that Capitol building, the people of Jehu. They enter the Capitol building while proceedings are going on in that Capitol building. And so they storm the building. And so, of course, in January 6th. Now, there's so much to this, but I'll say one thing, that at the end of that week, the Capitol Police, they announce we have the number of the people they've arrested on site. It says headlines. It said we've arrested 80 people on site for went into the building, or part of it. 80 people. Go to the Bible. You'll see the number about Jehu. You'll see the number. You'll see the word shmonim ish. It's the number of people who went into the building. It means 80 people. Good. Exactly. So this is and the significance is, and this is because this is going to go far. This is going to go well.
That's amazing.
It's going to go farther because the war between Jehu in the book, the whole section is called Jehu and the Temple of Baal. Because if you look now, what is the Temple of Baal is where they allowed them to kill children. Right. What is the American Temple of Baal? What has it been? It's been Roe versus Wade. Sure. That has been the vessel for 50 years that allowed them to kill 60 million children. So what the paradigm saying, this is another thing that it's in the book, but it came true after. And I'm not saying I knew it, but that is that the American, what it's saying is the American Jehu is going to be central in pulling down this temple, Roe versus Wade, and he would be.
He sure was.
He would be. Mm-hmm. And so he would take action, and the thing is that, and this goes to the next thing there, that there was a mysterious object that starts appearing in America. And when Trump starts rising, this object appears in New York City just before the election. And the object, I went and I witnessed this. Actually, it was around where we were. Yeah. And what it was the Arch of Baal from the temple. It was the Arch of Baal. They erected it in City Hall, outside of City Hall. The leaders of New York pronounced things. They had a ceremony. They unveiled it. God. They had music over it. We filmed it. And the thing is that it was a recreation of that arch from the temple that fell when Trump rose. Oh my God. And the other thing was later on, part of the pulling down of that temple, Roe versus Wade, is that Trump nominated 3 people to the Supreme Court, and without that, it would never have happened. The second one, all hell broke loose, was Kavanaugh, and remember Capitol Hill, yeah. and it was over this issue.
Yeah, sure.
And so it's amazing. You see the revelation of the spiritual warfare, because at the time that was happening, outside the Capitol, object appears on the National Mall, facing the Capitol. It's the Arch of Baal. And Baal versus Jehu is about life and death, and we're still in that battle. But it's actually going to happen. The pulling down of Roe versus Wade is going to happen after Trump is out of office. But what he did set the stage to pull it down. So the paradigm continues. So that's why I put that in the book.
Isn't that amazing? Who on earth would want the Arch of Baal anywhere close to him?
Yeah.
I mean, it's bizarre.
Yeah.
So what does Roe versus Wade have to do with the Josiah Manifesto?
Yeah. Well, Roe versus Wade, of course, this is, on one hand, the Jubilee has 2 sides. One is the restitution side. The other is the redemption or restoration side. Right. And this is going to be that. Because Roe versus Wade actually begins not in 73. Roe begins in 70 as well. And so when everything came, it was also the anniversary. It was the Jubilee of Roe versus Wade when COVID came and all that. The case began in 1970. And actually, when it was crystallized, when Norma McCorvey, who's the woman, went to in Dallas, went to a lawyer, it was the end of January. And so when you go back, end of January is when the plague enters America 50 years later. But the thing is that, here's the thing, God's the God of redemption. And something else has been happening the whole time when these 3 years that people weren't realizing it until the end. And that is that in the Jubilee of Abortion, 2020, when COVID's all over, something else is happening. And that is God takes another case and he sends it to the Supreme Court in 2020. Now, Roe versus Wade was sent to the Supreme Court in 2020 in the summer. This next case that is going to undo Roe versus Wade, everything's going to match the same way. It's sent to the Supreme Court in the summer of 2020, the Jubilee of that. But none of that. Roe versus Wade was taken up by the court on May of 1971. Go 50 years later, it takes you to May 2021. That's when this case is taken up by the Supreme Court. Roe versus Wade was heard by the Supreme Court in December of 71. Go 50 years later to the Jubilee. It's December of 2021. That's when this case receives its hearing. In fact, remember, Jimmy, when this case was leaked, just before it came out. Go back 50 years, and Roe was leaked just before.
It sure was.
So even that was.
Okay, what is the mystery of Adar 13 and Sivan 23?
Okay, and it's perfect. It's perfect Hebrew.
I asked him before the show how to say those words.
Yeah, but not everybody gets to. Okay, so in the book of Esther, this is how amazing God is. In the book of Esther, there are two decrees that are given. One is going to bring death, and that is Haman's decree when he says to wipe out the Jewish people. And the date that it's linked to, it says is Adar 13. Adar 13. Now that's the 13th day of the 12th month. 13. Well, that is the date of the decree of death and destruction. 13th day of the 12th month. Roe versus Wade was heard before the Supreme Court on December 13th, the 13th day of the 12th month. The day of death and destruction of a decree that's to bring it. And it did. But then when you read on, you see another decree, and that is Mordecai and Esther issue another decree that's going to undo the first decree. It's going to nullify Haman's decree. Okay, so when was that issued? The Bible said that was issued on Sivan 23. That's the date of the decree to undo evil decrees. Now, actually, it's not just there in Esther. That's become a day on the Hebrew calendar that Jewish people pray, God, undo every evil decree. Okay, so they're praying that. Well, this case that's going to undo Roe versus Wade is sent to the Supreme Court on June 15, 2020. But on the Bible's calendar, it was Sivan 23, the day of the decree to undo the decree of death and destruction.
That is unbelievable.
Literally, Jewish people are praying for this to happen, and it's being sent to the Supreme Court without anybody knowing.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, in your ministry and all the books that you've written, of course, I've had you on the show many times. We've been friends for a long time. You do this constantly. I mean, you're constantly pointing this and what it means. There's no way that happened by accident.
No.
Not with everything else you're talking about here.
No.
Isn't that amazing?
It is. And Jimmy, listen, I'm the first one to be amazed. People say, I'm amazed. I don't know. I don't even know how it happens. I can't reproduce the process. I can't reproduce the harmony. It just happens. God just does it. But this is God's hand. And someone wrote to me, emailed when I was heading here and said, I just read the thing. He says, I was not surprised, but I'm amazed. And I said, you know what? That's right. I'm not surprised because it's God, but I'm still amazed and I'm still blown away because it's God. And he's truly amazing and real.
Well, if people have unbelieving relatives, you can't give them a better gift than this right here. And challenge them to read it and just say, this guy, he's saying some things in here that just absolutely can't be. By chance, that it all points to God. Because I'm telling you, it is amazing. One more question, that is, what does Roe versus Wade, why does it have in common with the book of Leviticus?
Yeah. Well, Leviticus is what gives the countdown, of the Jubilee and countdown. And so again, we mentioned it when we talked about Castro, but 7 times you shall count 7 times 7 years, then comes the Jubilean year. Okay, so that's giving the parameters. The Jubilean year is the 50th year. So the 50th year ends when it achieves 50, but it begins once you pass 49. So what is the Jubilee of Roe versus Wade? Simply by Leviticus. Well, it began January 22nd, 2022, It ends January 22nd, 2023. So those are the parameters of that is the 50th year of Roe. Anything happen? It's right in the middle of that parameter of the Jubilee of Roe versus Wade that God overturns Roe versus Wade. That is in the Jubilean year, and he does it. What is the Jubilee? The Jubilee undoes what was done.
That's
it
right.
nullifies, it overturns the wrong that was done. And so too, it was the hand of God that did that in the exact parameters of Leviticus.
That's absolutely amazing. Well, this is the book. Rabbi Cahn is going to be with me on the next Tipping Point show. And so we have a lot more to talk about. We've just scratched the surface of this. The Josiah Manifesto. Now, Rabbi, where can people get the book?
The Josiah Manifesto is literally everywhere. You can go on Amazon right now, or any place online will have it. Bookstores, Walmart even has it. And that. But I pray, as you said, I thank you that you said that. I pray that people get it not just for themselves, get it for others, because that's true. That's exactly the reason.
Yeah, and Christmas is coming up, birthdays and things like that. It's the Josiah Manifesto, the ancient mystery in God for the end times. And we've been talking here for half an hour or so, and all the things that you've heard, this has got so much more in here. So get the book, and we're going to be back again next time talking about his new book. Rabbi, thank you for joining me today.
My blessing. Thank you, John.
Always a blessing. We'll see you next time here on the Tipping Point Show. God bless you. Goodbye.